ASEAN leaders have pledged to fight marine pollution at their summit over the weekend. They adopted a declaration reaffirming their commitment to do so and strengthening the way that they work together on this.
It's an issue that Singapore's Prime Minister says is urgent because the impact of marine pollution is wide-ranging, from public health and our food supply to business and tourism. Now, for more insight on this, we're joined by Stengert from environmental group WWF Singapore. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming in. So tell us, what are the most immediate issues then that countries in ASEAN will have to tackle on this front?
Look, I think first and foremost, it's really important that this statement came out. This common declaration of the countries is a really, really strong signal to the world that this is a transboundary issue that has to be tackled by all governments together. And so that's really, really an important step. I think the next piece by the ASEAN governments would be to convince the global governments to really turn this into a legally binding agreement so that we can have fast action and that the problem is really tackled once and for all.
Kim, are you concerned at all about the possibility of implementing this declaration despite that consensus?
Look, I think there's so many different things that need to be done to really tackle this plastic crisis. We have to look at what are the input materials, what is the waste management, collection, and all the other things. We have to look at what our business is doing. We have to set the enabling conditions for businesses as well as the regulations in many cases. I think it really needs a well-thought-through plan. It needs to be science and evidence-based as well. So I think it's really good if the governments come together to come up with a joint solution and joint targets to tackle this.
And when we're talking about sort of marine trash, what are we talking about and where is it coming from? Where are the sources of this trash?
Literally, first of all, it's everywhere now, and it comes from many, many different sources. What we see is, from plastic bottles, cigarette butts, we see all kinds of things, but plastic is literally everywhere now. It's a lot of single-use plastics, but all of the stuff really comes from land. If you look at it, 80% of all the plastic enters nature through land and not through marine. And I think the most common thing that we see now on shores everywhere is tiny microplastics, because the big plastic particles just break down into smaller and smaller pieces with time, and then of course makes it really, really difficult to clean it up or do anything with it.
So most of the trash is actually, 80% you're saying, is coming from the coastal areas, like people just throwing trash into the ocean from the coast?
It could be littering, it could be inadequate waste management, where stuff just leaks back into nature. Yeah, really 80% of everything comes from land.
And does that problem exacerbate during perhaps monsoon season, during floods, when you see trash from inland really just flowing out into the sea? They haven't necessarily thrown it into the sea. It's literally coming from inland.
Absolutely. That's one of the cases where it just enters, the open sea, but also in many places and remote islands or other places, you have really problems with waste management. What is done with the plastic? What kind of plastics are there? A lot of the times the way we think recycling works is actually not how it works in the real economy. There's lots of many different materials that can't be recycled properly, or they're contaminated. So they just end up in a landfill somewhere, and then from there, one flooding event, and everything goes back into nature.
And what are some of the most disturbing impacts then, or the most disturbing effects that you've seen from sort of the introduction of all these plastics and rubbish into our oceans?
Look, I think there's a couple of really disturbing things. I mean, we all know the pictures of the turtle and the straws or the sperm whale or anything. For me, most concerning is the news that just came out 2 weeks ago in terms of how much of that plastic in form of microplastic makes it back into us humans through the food we eat, the water we drink, or the air we breathe. That's a credit card a week, 5 grams of plastics that we're consuming, and science is still unclear what that means to our health.
So you're saying that's the plastic that's coming back through the food chain, through the food system.
Absolutely.
The fish are consuming it, and then it's finding its way back into us.
So you find it in the food we eat now, in the air we breathe, microfibers, nanoplastics, as well as in the water we drink, bottled or tap. It's basically everywhere.
So there is no doubt about the fact that these nanoplastics, as it were, as you say, scientists don't quite even know what kind of impact they're having on our bodies. They may be crossing the blood-brain barrier. So,
look, I think science is still rapidly evolving on this topic, and I think we have to just see what it means. And I hope there's no, gloom and doom scenario here.
Well, what do big corporations have to do here? Because, they're producing this plastic. We can put in as many laws about banning single use and so on, but we can't stop everybody we can't change everyone's behavior.
Yeah, and look, I think there's some really, really good use cases for plastics, right? If we talk about food waste, plastics help preserve food, so it can be, on shelf longer and can be used longer. But we really have to stop the excessive use. We have to look at, plastics are made from fossil fuels, so it's fueling climate change at the same time. So what is it made from? When are we using it, and also how is it disposed? And of course, through this supply chain, businesses play a huge role in many, many touch points.
Kim, thank you very much for coming into the studios to shed light on this very important topic that we all have to care about and do something about. We've been speaking there to Kim Stengert from WWF Singapore.